In this video, I'm talking about content transport. Now, content transport is getting your content from where you create it or aggregate it, like a studio, and moving it to someplace where you're distributing it, a distribution platform, like a traditional transmitter site or a server farm if you're doing streaming or podcasting. Now, I'm Marcos O'Rourke. I've been a broadcast engineer for over 20 years in the Los Angeles area, and recently I've moved out to Denver, and I'm now working for a content distribution company. In fact, that same company is today's sponsor of the video. Now, content transport is just my fancy way of saying moving your content from the studio to the place where it's going to get distributed to everybody. Whatever your content is. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's live streaming, music, talk, video, files, whatever. It's the transport of getting that from one place to the distribution. So let's start with the radio station, because that's what this channel is really focused on, is radio. And then we'll move on into file delivery, such as like podcasting and things like that. A radio station, a radio transmitter, it's a live stream of audio that gets sent from the studio to the transmitter, and then from the transmitter out to the antenna and off into the world for you to get all the content that you are looking for. If you're doing podcasting, it's getting that content from the studio or wherever you're putting it together, and then getting that to the servers or the content distribution network, or CDN. So let's go back to the radio station and that live stream of content. It comes out of your program bus. So if you don't know what the program bus is, watch the previous video where I talk about the studio and the content aggregation or creation and how you have a console that has a program bus. So that program bus feeds this content transportation, transport path, if you will. So there's a few ways that you can transport that audio from the studio and get it to the transmitter. So you can do an audio cable straight from the console into the transmitter. That's one way. You could do a microwave link, a point-to-point T1 circuit, an internet circuit. And this could be a wild public internet circuit, or it could be like a VPN or any other path that goes through a network. So if we're just bringing an audio cable to the transmitter side, that's going to be your simplest, easiest, no frills, no thrills content transportation. I mean, really, it's just taking cable and moving it over into, the transmitter. Usually this is going to be in stations that have their transmitter site co-located with their studio. Nowadays, it's less and less likely that you're going to encounter a facility that has their transmitter site and studio. There are still a few out there, but the co-location of those two has been steadily decreasing. Moving on to one of the next things, but still kind of sitting in the past. So equalized phone lines, they might still be lurking out there. However, I can't imagine that there's anybody from the phone companies who can really work on these things still. These were specialized phone lines that you would put your audio into one side, and it would have little transformers on there, which would basically equalize the audio. Stick it on some regular phone lines, send it into the phone company. The phone company would patch your cable into a jack from here to there and there to here. Basically, it would be a long cable just going through the phone company from your studio to your transmitter. Again, really simple. Audio comes in, audio goes out. It's all analog, no frills, no thrills type of thing. But like I said, there's nobody really around to work on those. The phone company really doesn't want to maintain those in a lot of areas. Those types of circuits have just been turned off. And another technology that has seen its sunset is point-to-point T1s. I mentioned those in our list earlier, but these were basically a data connection, a 1.5 megabit per second data connection that you would have basically a modem and an encoder on one side and a decoder on the other. Your audio would go in, get turned into bits, it would be sent to the other side and turned back into audio. And there might be a little bit of data left over after the audio, which would let you do now playing information or telemetry or commands, not necessarily telemetry because that would be coming back. But like equalized phone lines, point-to-point T1 lines have passed into the history of the Bell system. But still staying in the theme of point-to-point, point-to-point microwave links are still in service. There are still places that are using point-to-point analog or point-to-point digital microwave links to get audio from the studio to the transmitter. Now, these microwave links are generally in the 950 megahertz range, and they're specifically licensed for radio stations and moving content, audio content for transmission on a radio station. We won't cover the licensing side of this today, but in the future, that is something that we can cover. But the early days of those point-to-point microwave links were basically, like I said, the analog side were basically a high-quality walkie-talkie. You could turn a radio into that frequency and hear the audio that is being sent. Then came the digital point-to-point microwave links. Things like the Mosley Starlink would create a digital encoding of the audio and send it that way. Just like with the T1, but wirelessly in a path. But now we have IP links that are microwaves. 6 gig, 11 gig, there's a higher one, 20-something gig. They will basically be like a network cable, a wireless network cable, from your studio to your transmitter link. And that lets you do so much more than just sending audio to that far end. You can now send audio out, you can get audio back, you can send commands out, you can get telemetry back, you can monitor all your stuff, you can see webcams, security cams, remote controls, all kinds of stuff. So IP microwave links are pretty cool and pretty easy to do these days. If you have a very short distance, you can do something as simple as like the Ubiquity Air Fiber or the Unify. Oh, what's their other one that they have? Anyways, there are really affordable options out there. Or you could go with the biggies like Dragon Wave, Cambium. There's one more. And it's right on the tip of my tongue. And anyways, if it'll be right here if I can remember it. IP microwave links. We'll circle back to them. We're going to put them in the parking lot for now. Don't forget about them, but we'll come back for them. And then one more type of semi-legacy, but still kind of current studio to transmitter link technology that's out there is satellite. You can do a satellite point-to-point link or a point-to-multipoint link. There are transmitter sites where getting data is darn near impossible, or getting good data or a lot of data is darn near impossible. Or if you don't have a line of sight to the transmitter side, you've got a mountain in the way, or you're in a valley and you just don't have that line of sight. You could send it up to a satellite, it bounces off, and come back to your transmitter site or transmitters, transmitter sites, multiple sites if you have that. Speaking of satellite delivery, the sponsor of today's video is a content provider who does provide satellite delivery, and that is LinkUp Communications. Hi, I'm going to take a moment here and recognize the sponsor of today's video, LinkUp Communications. When your content has to get to your audience, you can count on their content distribution using XDS and other industry-leading platforms. LinkUp has provided distribution solutions with the highest degree of reliability for over 3 decades. If you're wanting more information about their services or just who are they, visit their website at linkupcommunications.com. And now, back to the video. The new hot technology for studio to transmitter links these days is, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. You ready? You're not going to believe this. The internet. Okay, maybe you kind of saw where this was going, but yes, the internet is the new paths that we have available to us. 10, 15 years ago, the internet was not stable enough for consistent transport of audio. And if it was really expensive. But nowadays, there are way more options than what we had before. Little history. The internet was created for researchers to share information. And during the Cold War, the need for a way to communicate during and after a nuclear attack was in the minds of the United States military and the researchers who contracted with the military. But since then, the internet has become a highly connected system of networks, different multiple networks. Coming back to why I'm talking about this, you'll see here. So these different networks are what we call the internet. And without getting too deep into the weeds of what the internet is, think of your different internet providers. Okay, you've got like AT&T, CenturyLink, Comcast, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these different providers of your internet connection. What they have done is they have built themselves a network in your area or in your region. And at certain places, they have what are called peering points, and that's how they connect to the other network providers. So your AT&T will come to a building and will have a room where Verizon and Comcast and CenturyLink and whoever, they're all there in that same room and they all have connections to each other. So that's what the internet is, using dynamic or DNS and routing and BGP, all that fun stuff. But again, like I said, we're not going to go into the weeds on that. But generally, these providers, they don't share the same path for their cables or their routes. And that is what makes the internet very resilient and very reliable, generally. Again, in a disaster, all bets are off because there's widespread damage. But normal day-to-day, the internet can be extremely reliable. So in a previous video, we talked about the studio, and I mentioned codecs. So these will take your audio, convert it to data, send it along a path, a network path, unconvert it on the other side, or deconvert it, or turn it back from data into audio. And so that's what a codec does. It's an encoder, decoder. So you can have bidirectional audio. Now, some of these codecs made by companies like Gates Air, Comrex, Telos, there's a few others out there. Some of these codecs can take two different networks and basically run the stream across both of them. So what'll happen is that it'll take the audio, convert it into data. Those data packets will basically get serial numbers on them. And then through the magic of proprietary software, it will send them out the two different network paths. And then on the other end, these codecs will see these packets coming in, see the serials on them, and put them back in the right order and reassemble your audio stream. And you will never hear a blip, a drop, a glitch while you have both of them running. And even if one drops and it switches, you will be solid. I know this from experience. I have done this relatively recently. You can do it with like an SD-WAN solution. That is possible. You're going to need an IT person to work you through that. So it is possible to do it without doing fancy codecs. But again, that is way above the level of this video, so we won't get into that. I know of this major network that's using this technology to get their audio from their facility on one side of the country and transporting it through the internet to their distribution platform on the other side of the country. That's all I can say about that right now. And rumor mill has it, from what I can put together from different sources, a major Christian broadcaster network is going to be using the same type of technology to feed its 1,000+ radio stations across the country. Now, I like talking about reliability and redundancy and having multiple options in case of a failure. I've talked about it on this channel in the past. So, remember what we put in the parking lot. We put those IP microwave links in the parking lot. Okay, it's just a network connection. You are basically creating your own private network right there. So, hear me out. What if you have your internet connection as WAN 1, Wide Area Network 1, and then you have this IP microwave link as WAN 2, and that is your secondary connection. Now you have a path that's maintained by this company, and now you have another path that's maintained by you. So you have multiple options of keeping that together. Or, if you want to get even crazier, you have two sets of codecs. Set A of codecs will be through two different internet providers. Set B of codecs will be through your IP microwave link, and the second network would be either a cell, a hotspot of a cell, or something like Starlink. Now, you have these two different codec systems running to your transmitter site, and then from there, you just put a box on the other side that listens for silence, and then will switch between them. Whichever one is up, it will take that one. Things like broadcast tools is one of them, or even your audio processor, which we'll talk about in the next video. The audio processor may have that ability to switch between sources. If you do go down the cellular route, a word of warning, when they say you have unlimited data, don't believe it. They may say that to you. They may promise you unlimited data. It's really not. You get to a point, and then all of a sudden they throttle your data throughput down like crazy. You went from having 100 megs, for example, or 50 megs of data, all the way down to 14.4K. So let's leave the world of traditional audio and come back to file delivery and live streaming. Basically, they're going to be about the same type of system. You may have heard that most, almost all radio stations these days will stream live on the internet. But other than you set up a computer, stick the audio into it, and hit go, how does that work? What happens when the audio goes from that computer to wherever it goes? So that computer is a streaming encoder. Just like those codecs we talked about, this encoder takes the audio coming into the computer, turns it into data, mixes it with now playing information if you have that available, and then sends it as a stream of data to a server, whoever your stream provider is. Now that stream provider will then take that data and duplicate it across different servers across the country. All your listeners are not coming back and hitting one server, or if that one server goes down, you're not completely down. So that system of servers is called a content distribution network, a CDN. And we use that for streaming at my daytime job. And actually, right now, you are watching this video from a CDN. YouTube's servers, Google's servers, are spread out across the world. I was going to say across the country, but really across the world. And wherever you are actually going to the closest data center to you and streaming this video to your computer and watching it. That's kind of the beauty of content distribution networks. And we're going to cover that a little bit more in content distribution. That's the next video. File delivery for podcasting. Same thing. You're just not streaming it to servers. You're basically recording that file. You're doing your podcast And that's the way it is. Hit stop on the recorder, edit, creating your final MP3, and then you're uploading it to a server. That's still going to get copied and distributed to the content distribution network, whoever your podcast platform is. All right, we've talked a lot about how to get your audio from the studio to the transmitter. We've talked about getting your streaming audio to the servers. We've talked about getting your podcast files to the servers. Now, I know many of you are long-time broadcast engineers who have many, many more years of experience than I do and have had some pretty exciting stories of novel ways of getting content from one point to another. So I would love to hear from you. Comment on this video down below and tell me what, without giving away trade secrets, tell me what some of the more novel ways that you've done content transport. I have one that was from my really early days of radio. And that's actually in the members section where I talk about rolling a box of Cat 5 down a hill. That's all I'll say about that. I will also be posting, if not posted already before this video launches, another video where I talk about where I've done, what I've done in the past with making reliable transmitter or studio to transmitter links with the stations that I've maintained. So keep an eye out for that video if you haven't seen it already. Watch the rest of the videos in this series right here. Maybe take a tour of a studio facility, or maybe take a tour of a transmitter site. Hey, the world's your oyster, as they say. And my channel is your channel, mi casa, su casa. Till next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning.